All right, 7.9.2 is all about areas of circles. So our last lesson, we talked about circumference of a circle, which is just literally the distance around the outside of a circle. So sort of the length, if you broke a circle apart and laid the outside of it flat, just how far that distance is around the outside. Area is slightly different. The area of a circle is the amount of surface covered by that circle. So area in general is surface covered by any figure. Area of a circle is the amount of surface, so like flat surface, covered by a figure. So it's more encompassing, sort of both length and a width, so to speak, rather than just one part around the outside. So it's the whole part, including the middle, that the circle covers. We use the radius of the circle, so that's the important dimension that we need in order to find area. We use the radius as part of our formula. So area of a circle is equal to pi times the radius squared. A few things to note. Pi can be 3.14 or 22/7. You can use either one. I would say generally it is widely accepted to use 3.14. If you are specifically told to use 22/7, do that. Otherwise, I think 3.14 is probably your best bet. The second thing is that we multiply also by the radius squared. Now, this is important. It is important because we need to remember that when we square a number, we multiply it by itself. So let's say our radius was 3, and we needed to do 3 squared. Remember that when we square a number, you multiply it by itself. So this is 3 times 3, which is 9. It is not 3 times 2. Okay, so be super careful because that's a mistake that a lot of people make with circles. The other thing that we need to remember is order of operations. So when we're doing area of a circle, we always square the radius first. This is always step 1. Square your radius, because order of operations, right? Parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. There are no parentheses. The next thing that we have to do are the exponents. So our squared, that 2 is an exponent. We have to do that first. Once we square the radius, then the last step is to multiply by pi, because that's our M, multiplication in PEMDAS. So be careful of your order of operations, and be careful that you are squaring the radius, not multiplying by 2. Let's do a couple examples. All right, this one tells us specifically that we're going to use 22/7 for pi. Okay, so we'll make sure that we use that. When we use it, remember, a lot of times they tell us to use it when our radius or diameter is a multiple of 7. And that's because it ends up getting rid of denominators and gives us whole numbers. So we're going to use 22/7. Always start by writing the area. Area of a circle equals pi times r squared. Then we plug in what we know. We are going to use 22/7 for pi. So instead of pi, we'll put 22/7. And our radius of our circle is 7. And we will do that squared. So we plugged in a value for pi, we plugged in a value for our radius, and now we can continue on our math. So I'm going to keep my 22/7 because my first step is to square that radius. 7 squared means 7 times 7. So 7 times itself, not 7 times 2. So 7 times 7 is 49, and I could put that over 1 because it's a whole number. And then the reason that we can use 22/7 and why they recommend it is because we can cross simplify. 7 goes into 7 one time, 7 goes into 49 7 times, then I can just multiply my numerators and multiply by my denominators, and I'll have a whole number. So 22 times 7 is 154. For area, because we are looking at a flat space that's taken up, it's units squared. So this would be centimeters squared would be the area of this circle. So that's using 22 over 7. It's nice because it allows you to have a whole number in your answer. But if you don't use 22 over 7, you can use 3.14. You just have to be really careful about the rounding. So if you're using 3.14, a lot of times you're going to be asked to round to the nearest whatever, hundredth or tenth or whole number. Just read carefully and make sure you're rounding correctly. All right, let's look at this one. It says use 3.14 for pi. And here's our circle. We've got a circle with a diameter of 26 inches. The first thing we need is if we look at our area formula, area equals pi r squared. If the diameter is 26, we know that the radius would be half that. So our radius is 13 inches. Now we've got everything we need. So pi is 3.14, and our radius is 13, and we will square that. Remember, order of operations, the first thing we'll do is square 13. So don't do 3.14 times 13. That's multiplication. That has to come after the exponent. So exponent first. 13 squared is 169. And then our last step is to do 3.14 times 169, which gives us 530.66, and our units would be inches squared. Okay, this did not say that we needed to round to anything specific, so we would just give the answer that we found, 530.66. If it asked us to round, we would make sure that we round appropriately to the place value that it asked. All right, to find the area of a semicircle. So this is a bit more straightforward than circumference of a semicircle. So area of a semicircle, remember a semicircle is half. So we're basically just going to find the area of the circle, pi r squared, and cut it in half, right? That would give us half the area, or the area of the semicircle. So the formula for area of a semicircle is area of a circle divided by 2, so half of that. All right, for example, find the area. Here's a semicircle. This 30 feet tells us that that is the diameter of this semicircle. So what we need for area is just a radius, which would be half that diameter. So our radius is 15 feet. Now let's start with our formula. Area of a circle is equal to pi r squared. And then we'll divide that by 2 because we only want half, right? The semicircle. Plug in what we know. Pi is 3.14. Our radius is 15, and we'll square that. And then last of all, we'll divide by 2. Keeping straight our order of operations, we bring down our 3.14. We square 15, so 15 times 15 is 225, and we'll divide by 2. And then simplify our numerator, 3.14 times 225 is 706.5. To get half the circle, we divide by 2. So our area of our semicircle is 353.25 feet squared. All right, last of all, little word problem. It says a tsunami warning siren can be heard 2.5 miles away in all directions. Remember, the geometric definition of a circle is a point where every point on the circle is equidistant from the center. So if we have a little tsunami warning at the center, and the warning can be heard the same amount of miles away in all directions, it is just a circle from that point. Now, we know that in all directions from that center circle, we can hear the tsunami. How long is that radius? Well, if you can hear it 2.5 miles away, that means 2.5 miles in any direction is going to get us to the edge of that circle. So our radius is 2.5. Here's what it asks. For how many square miles can the siren be heard? So what we're looking for is in total, how much space is this siren covering? Okay, if its radius is 2.5 in all directions, how much area can be reached by that siren? So we're looking for the area of this circle. Area equals pi times the radius squared. Let's plug in what we know. Pi is 3.14. Our radius is 2.5, and we'll have to square that. So bring down our 3.14 because it's not time to use it yet. 2.5 squared is 6.25. And then we multiply that by 3.14. So the total in terms of square miles is 19.625 square miles is how much area that's covered by that siren. Again, you may be asked to round, so remember, this is whole numbers that you underline the place it's asking you to round, look to the right, and then you determine whether that number stays the same or rounds up. So whole numbers, this is tenths, this is hundredths, and this is thousandths. I think a lot of the time you're going to be asked to round to the hundredths place. So just remember, underline the place you're rounding to, look to the right. In this case, if we were rounding to the hundredths, we would round that 2 up to a 3. But they didn't ask us to round, so we're just going to put it in how we found it because we weren't asked to round. All right, that's it. So things to remember in this chapter. Number 1, squaring equals multiplying a number by itself. By itself. So, for example, 4 squared is 4 times 4, which is 16. Thing number 2, do your exponents first. So your r squared is what you need to do before you multiply times pi. And finally, last thing to remember is rounding rules. Okay, when you're asked to round, make sure that you check the place you're rounding to and round correctly. Those are the 3 things that I foresee being troublesome, so just watch for those things as you do this lesson.